Hey everyone. All right, so let's go through confidence intervals. So we went through how to hand calculate them in class as well as to go through them in Excel. I'm just going to go through that again. So let's say we want to get a 95% confidence interval for, let's call this OSU. Let's call this U of O. And let's say we want to understand what the population average of OSU students were on this standardized test. So we want to go through and we want to get the the confidence interval, which, if we can remember back for our notes, is the sample mean plus or minus 2 standard errors. And the nice thing about Excel is it actually does the 2 times the standard error, or 1.96 to be technical, times the standard error for us. So let's go ahead and do that. So we actually go through and we want to calculate the confidence interval. And the command is equals confidence dot norm. So we want to get a confidence interval for normal distribution, and then parentheses. It asks us what our alpha level is, our standard deviation is, and our sample size. So before we even do our confidence interval, we need to go ahead and we need to get our standard deviation. And we also need to, and when we think about what the calculation is, we need to get our sample mean as well. So let's go ahead and get our means and our standard deviations ahead of time. So equals average A2 to A31 to get the average score for the OSU students on the test, and then the standard deviation. So STDEV.S A2 to A31 to get the standard deviation for OSU students on that test. Now we can go get our confidence interval, and remember that it's confidence.norm. The first thing it asks for is our alpha level, which is in this class always going to be 0.05. So if we get a p-value of less than 0.05, that is noted as statistically significant. And then our standard deviation, which is that, so I just click on that. And then size. And our sample size, if we look at it, goes from A2 to A31, which is 30. There's 30 people in the sample. So we do that, and we get 3.83. And what this essentially tells us is this is 1.96 times the standard error. So if we think back to our formula, this is the 2 times standard error, or 1.96 technically, times the standard error. So now, if we go back to our formula for 95 confidence interval to get the lower and upper limit is simply the sample mean plus or minus 2 times the standard error. And we have this number calculated already, so all we have to do to get our lower and upper limit is go equals our mean minus this number, and we get 77.83. So our lower limit on the confidence interval is 77.83. And then to get the upper, we just simply go mean plus 1.96 times. We go 3.83, and we get 85.5. So we are 95% confident that the true OSU average score on that test was somewhere between 77.83 and 85.499. So it's not saying that 95% of OSU students scored between these two numbers. It's saying the true population average for OSU students on that test is somewhere between 77.83 and 85.5. So we're 95% confident about that. So let's do that with U of O too. So equals average. Again, B2 to B31 because that's the sample, and then STDEV.S B2 to B31, and let's do the same thing. So we want to calculate what the 1.96 times the standard deviation is. So we go confidence.norm, alpha level 0.05 again because that's our significance level, our standard deviation, and again our sample size, which is 30. So we have here confidence.norm, our alpha level, our standard deviation, and our sample size. And we get 3.46. So to get our upper limit and our lower limit, we go equals the mean minus this value, and we get 79.57, and then equals the mean plus 3.46, and we get 86.5. So, put another way, we are 95% confident the true U of O average score on this test is somewhere between 79.57 and 86.5. So hopefully that helps you out again. It's a little bit complicated when we think about the fact that Excel actually does the 2 times the standard error for us. But all we need to do to calculate a confidence interval is to get our means and standard deviations before we try to do the confidence interval command. Then all we do is type in confidence.norm parentheses our alpha level, which is always going to be 0.05. We plug in our standard deviation, and we get our sample size. And once we get that number, to get the lower limit, we just take the mean and subtract whatever this number is. To get the upper limit, we take the mean and add this number, whatever it is, and we get the upper and lower limit. And again, a confidence interval tells us that we are 95% confident, if we're doing a 95% confidence interval, that the true population mean rests between those 2 values. Again, it is not saying 95% of the values rest between those 2 values. It's saying the average, the population average, we're 95% confident rests between those values. If you have any questions, please let me know, but hopefully this helps you out. Take care.